Our meeting to order. This is the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission. This is Monday, December 16th. It's now 7 p.m. I'd like to record the attendance that Ryan is joining us, and Rob and Wendy. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you.
Glad to see you
Welcome
here.
back.
And of course, I'm here too. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there any conflict of interest by any of our planning commission members?
No.
Great. I'd like to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2024 meeting. I'd like to say, first of all, I appreciate Ryan reviewing those carefully beforehand and sending us his comments on those. I had just really one change that I made, and that is that I was chairman of the meeting.
Item as well.
Wendy?
Article 9, I wasn't at the meeting, but just reviewing the agenda from the previous, or from the meeting. Article 9, the requested action is incorrect. It's like cut and pasted from Article 8.
The same stuff.
Yeah. And that's not what was requested, so I think that needs to be changed.
Good, thank you. Any other changes?
It's not a change, but a question, because I think it was an omission that we usually have these standard boilerplate. So Article 7, motion part 2 was accessory dwelling will not be used to run a business. We usually say or a dwelling. We usually kind of say that hand in hand. And I know, I understand we didn't say that. Is it to be inferred, or can they actually use it for a dwelling since we didn't explicitly say no?
The ordinance doesn't allow it. It's not necessary.
It's not necessary. Okay, so it's redundant. Okay.
Any other changes?
I'm just reviewing the center, but I didn't have a chance to review the markup.
Rob, did you see anything?
Nothing major. I mean, splitting hairs, I think it was a Pepsi bottling facility, not a Coca-Cola. But I don't think that matters. You know,
Is that right, Joel?
that's true.
It's true, but I believe Andrea was referencing it as Coca-Cola. So if it's capturing the minutes what was said, I think it was. That's my recollection. All right, looks good to me.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Well, first of all, I need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as modified this afternoon by staff. How do we capture these mods?
So everyone should have a copy of those
Yep.
in their hands. I think that you probably should just say it out loud because they're not recorded. We haven't
Oh, you
put
have to
them
go
in
through
the
and list
public
each one?
packet. Yep, so I would say,
And you want 9 to be,
What it was on the agenda. I'm sure they weren't asking for a new truck well loading dock and storage area for display. I think that they were asking for what's on our agenda tonight. That was cut and pasted from Article 6 or Article 8.
okay. All right, so I'll try it. I make a motion to approve the minutes with the following edits. Article 7, the paragraph before the motion by Vice Chair Rissy is such that water stays in his yard currently rather than water flows into his yard currently. Article 8, the motion itself by Secretary Nordyke, it states for a site plan of the proposed outdoor. a site plan of, those four words are erroneous and should be stricken. Article 9, the item as presented is a cut and paste error, and it should be reflective of the true agenda item. And then finally, Article 9, before the motion, the following should be inserted. Member Bruno initiated questioning regarding fire access requirements, noting apparent discrepancies between the site plan presentation and current operations. Joel Bodbill, representing the Lakeland Pallets, addressed those concerns by confirming their 18-year operational history at their previous location with annual fire department compliance inspections. New paragraph, Chair Moxley reported observations from his site visit regarding pallet stack configurations and congestion at the site. Mr. Bodbill confirmed current stack heights of 16 feet. He also confirmed working to accommodate the fire department request. New paragraph. The commission discussed screening requirements with Mr. Bodbill requesting consideration of existing natural vegetation while acknowledging potential additional slat screening needs at the west side. CP&D Director Hendrick clarified the screening recommendation, specifically addressed the fence's northwest corner visible from Craft Avenue. And then finally, Article 10, the paragraph before the motion was made by Vice Chair Rissy. The following sentence should be added to be sentence number 2. Member Bruno raised concerns about the applicant's multiple components, suggesting the need to separate the request.
Thank you. Can I have a second for the motion? A motion made and motion's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. I'd like to now acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak, and the comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. These are comments not related to what's on the agenda for Articles 7 and 8. This is general comments you may have. Anybody in the audience? Scott Rissy.
Scott Rissy, 7238 Cascade Road. I just wanted to come in tonight and congratulate Ralph on his upcoming retirement and thank him for his time and dedication to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. And something that some people might not realize is that there was a period of time on the Planning Commission when we had a few subcommittees over the years. And we had limited township staff at that time, and Ralph took it upon himself to do all the minutes for those committees. And if you were to read some of those, they read more like a transcript of the meeting. But he put a great deal of time and effort into that so that if questions come up in the future, somebody can look back and know exactly what we were thinking. So he put a lot of time into that, and we thank you for that, as well as all the other accomplishments you've had while you've been here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, going back, Scott and I and Chris were involved in Round Hill. That was kind of our first major project dealing with that mess.
At Round Hill, and then we did the Wormies subcommittee with Wendy, I believe. We had airport subcommittee. I could probably name a few more if I really thought about it, but we don't need to relive them.
Department preservation.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Chris Nordyke, 3720 Oak Bluff Drive. I wanted to come and also personally congratulate you on your retirement and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Your commitment to this township. You started, I think, a year after me, and just have been steadfast, been to all the meetings. And I just thank you for volunteering your time and the commitment and to making us a better body, both as a chairman and as a member. So I wish you luck in the next chapter of life. I don't know what that is, but I hope it involves trains. And I just really appreciate everything that you've done for this township.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations to both Chris and Scott for being the new trustees for Cascade Charter Township.
Thanks, guys.
Fine. Anybody else in the audience wants to make general comments? Okay. All right, let's move on to Article 7, case number 243868. This is Lakeland Pallets, Inc. Andrea?
Thank you, Chairman. As you mentioned, this is case number 243868. This will be 3700 Craft Avenue. This was tabled at the last meeting. So I'll kind of be quick running through it. The subject parcel is located at the southeast corner of Craft and 36th Street. It's a current industrial property. The pallet manufacturing facility is actually just relocated from the parcel on the west side of Craft, directly across the street. So we've talked a lot about this. There was a variance granted for this site from the Zoning Board of Appeals to allow for outdoor storage within the setback. I won't reiterate everything that we discussed last time. There is now a full site plan in the packet. I do also want to note that the applicant just went and added the slatting to the fence. So in your packet in staff review, that slatting, just an image of that is included. The parking calculations and all of the administrative site plan review elements is included in the staff review that was provided to the applicant, because it still is an administrative site plan review with a special use for planning commission approval. So you'll see the back and forth between the applicant and the planning director in the staff report. And then planning commission have any questions for staff?
Any questions?
I have a question for maybe the applicant. Is the applicant here?
Same here.
Okay,
Okay.
Joel, you want to come up and introduce yourself? Give us your address, please.
Joel Budbow, Lakeland Pallets, 3700 Craft Avenue.
Do you have a question?
But we wanted to defer. You raised your hand first.
Just a question, what's the plans for your current location?
The 3801
Across the
or
street? Yeah, are you keeping that as the same type of business, or are you gonna end up selling? one?
right now we have it on the market looking for a potential tenant to lease it out.
Ryan?
I had two for you. So love the site plan. It did give me pause at first because I remember that 30 foot from the fire marshal. And like I see 22.5, 23.6, but I did see the following memo that those dimensions are fine. But the two things that kind of just struck me is, I don't know, strange, I guess, would make me feel more comfortable, I guess, to get my vote. There was discussion of that you're going to put a fire barrier, a paved portion between the parking lot and the woods, but it really wasn't defined when. Is that something that you would be willing to do sooner rather than later? Like if we put that as a conditional, would you be okay with that? I just would hate to see like the airport shut down someday and go, oh wow, we really should have had them do that before they started.
Yeah.
It would be kind of an ironic, weird situation.
So when discussing with the fire department, whether they wanted access to the back side of that, like they kind of talked about a fire road. And our plan down the road is to expand that lot to the east there. And we told them that we would give them an access road at that time. As far as clearing a barrier a buffer between some of the wooded area and the parking lot, we are looking at doing that already, just cleaning out some of the brush to help prevent that. So if you'd like to see us do that, we could. When I talked to Todd, the fire marshal, and the inspector there, he said as long as they were able to access the backs of those stacks and create 4-foot gaps, he said periodically throughout the stacks, he said that's all they needed to be able to get to the back and to access it. So he was good without the fire lane, and he even said, I wouldn't mandate you guys clear the brush if you wanted to do that on your own. He said, that's fine, but as long as they had access to the backs of the stacks, that was what he was most concerned about. So if a fire road would be a little more difficult for us, but if we expand that lot in the future, I did tell them and you that we would give a fire road on the backside of that so that they would be able to access it. And if we did that, there would be more room for a truck back there anyways to access, but he was on board with our periodic spacing of the stacks and allowing them to access it if there ever were an issue.
All right. And then my second question, I think, was that periodic spacing. And I think I have the notation here as 8-foot rows. Like he mentions that you should have every 50 to 75 feet, you should have an 8-foot wide row between. I don't see that drawn
Between
anywhere.
pallets.
Between pallets. Is that something that could be added to here, or does that move, like, depending on, like, might you have 50 feet and 8-foot and 50 feet and 8-foot, and the next order might be 75 feet and 8-foot, 75 feet and 8-foot? Is that dynamic, or?
Yes, good question. It is dynamic, and he didn't put that, I don't believe, in his letter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what he was kind of asking for was 4 feet. He said, I told him that 8 was probably a little too large. He said, that's fine, as long as it's 4 feet, so that, you know, someone could go between the stacks if they needed to with a hose and access the back of the stack. So it's not drawn on the site plan, but it is dynamic. If you walk the site today, you'd notice that based on the size of the pallets that we build and fluctuating inventories, where those spaces are can move around a little bit, but he was okay as it was the day that he walked because there were periodic spaces, but if we drew them on the site plan, it would change a little bit.
I think we should get on the record that it's 4 feet rather than 8.
It's basically a fire break between the pallet piles.
Correct. And it's,
Slowing things down.
yeah, and it's less for fire break as it is for access. So he said if you had a fire road behind it, then it would allow us, there's just some way to get to the back of a stack if need be. So that was their note to us, but we did have them out and had a thorough walkthrough, and then they put together that letter for us. So that was one of the concerns that was raised last time we were here, as well as the slatting on the northwest corner, which we went ahead and took care of, and finalized the site plan with the parking requirements as well. So
We appreciate your quick response. I've already addressed some of it, so.
yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys coming out and having, I don't know if this was a special meeting for you tonight before the holidays, but thank you for doing that.
I'm gonna make a motion. I would move to approve case number up here. Case number 24-3868 with the following 2 conditionals: that the brush be cleared to provide a 4-foot buffer to the east edge of the lot between the pallets and the woods. And then that the record be corrected that the access between pallet stacks between 50 and 75 feet long, the width of that access shall be 4 feet rather than 8.
Okay, we have a motion, it's been supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joel.
Yes, congratulations to you as well, and thank you for your service to the township.
And can you say your last? I'm sure I slaughtered it every time. How-
It's fine, but it's Bodbile.
Todd Bile. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Article 8. Case number 24-3866. Shaggy Pines Dog Park. Andrea, staff comments?
I will defer to Ms. Bouchard on this one.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hello, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lot of kind words people had for you today, and very well deserved. Well, nice to see you all. I'm gonna go over this request just a little bit in length due to our new voting members, so you can have a little bit more context. And there are a couple things to note as of last time that we had kind of talked about this, so I kind of want to just make sure that any everyone's clear and of the process and the request moving forward. So of course, I'll kind of dig into that, but the case is for a type 2 special land use. So this will go to the township board if upon approval of the planning commission for a private outdoor recreational use in the ARC district. Additionally, the applicant is seeking a type 1 accessory building or approval for an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet. So I'll kind of explain the mechanics of how all of this happened. As I mentioned, the subject site is zoned ARC located at 3895 Cherry Lane Avenue. The subject site is approximately 19.8 acres in size. The existing land use is a private membership-only dog park with a current special land use approval for a kennel that was approved by the township board back in 2003. Adjacent property zoning and land uses include all agricultural, rural, conservation, and adjacent land uses are either vacant or their residential home, single-family residential home, or farmland. So just to give a little bit of history, this existing current use of the membership-only private recreation dog park was originally approved in February of 2003. At that time, there were 2 conditions of approval, the first of which that any on-site trees remain existing on site except as those shown on the plan to be removed, and then all lighting be downcast. I should note and to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we kind of move through this discussion and as the planning commission then deliberates, that the zoning ordinance currently does not have dog parks listed as a permitted use in any district, let alone the ARC district. So at the time in 2003, which was still the case at that point, the staff at that time had utilized a kennel as the way to kind of as a most similar use as in order to kind of move this request further. So when this came across our desk a month or 2 ago, I was looking at the definition of kennel, which states a place of 5 or more dogs, cats, or other household pets 4 months of age or older, kept either temporarily or permanently for any reason other than medicine, including board breeding or sale. So we felt like that the existing use and the proposed use didn't really meet the definition of a kennel or the intent of a kennel.
So I admit, I didn't read this close enough last time, but this time there's so many more minutes. But doesn't it meet it closer than what we're proposing now? Like I read this with any place, so this is a dog park in which 5 or more dogs, and they're saying they expect about 60 cats or other household pets. So I guess you're probably not walking a cat, but some people do. But it's a dog park, so I don't know how that work out. 4 months of age or older are kept either temporarily or permanently for any reason other than veterinary. It sounds almost like I think it's a terrible definition of a kennel in a way, but it's a good definition of a dog park.
I'll let you finish, but I don't really love the private outdoor rec use.
I don't either, and I apologize. I didn't raise that more last time, but having read it more and read all the minutes from previously, it's.
You can go ahead and finish and then.
Which is fine at this point, right? Because the intent, so this all got brought together because of the proposed use of the new structure, more or less. So if you guys are comfortable with the use, I looked at the definition of kennel and I was like, there's just no really good fit. And so I thought, okay, this is membership only. It's an outdoor use. It's recreation. The current zoning ordinance doesn't define recreation. It doesn't define outdoor recreation or anything like that. So that was the thought process behind that. But, it was noticed, but that doesn't mean that it needs to carry over to that. Did you have a question? You looked like you were about to ask. Okay.
Well, I guess, sorry, interrupted. But
Sure.
Does it matter? Like you're saying, it's fine. So materially, does it change much if we keep kennel versus outdoor recreation, or is it kind of all the same, just a label?
So not necessarily. There are supplemental requirements that are applicable to kennels only in the zoning ordinance. So we would have to just kind of go through those to make sure that the request still meets the definition of a kennel in those supplemental regulations, which I can kind of pull up as we're talking here to make sure. From past staff review, I did go through that, and it was found at the time that it was all consistent and compliant with supplemental requirements. But I would recommend that we just go through those or at least quickly read through them to make sure that the request is compliant with that.
Thank you.
So then having said that, I'll kind of breeze through the type 2 special land use part if if it's among the consensus of the group that kennel is more appropriate in this sense. However, I should note that the proposal in front of you today is more geared towards the proposed new structure to be located on site. So the proposed structure is approximately 7,550 square feet in size, 70 by 108. This includes the covered porch. So that is where you get the 70. I believe the narrative says 60, but we included the covered porch as part of the building footprint because the zoning ordinance defines covered porches as part of a building. The building is a barn style building, approximately 26 feet in height. And the intended use is for storage of the park's equipment, maintenance workshop to support repairs and improvements of the property, and an indoor training room to allow for dog training classes year round and during inclement weather. The proposed building will also provide improved space for the park's clubhouse and reception area and office. I should note that upon approval, should the planning commission approve the proposed use and the proposed structure, that the existing structure on site, which is the current member clubhouse or former residential home, is not intended to be utilized in any way, shape, or form. It is possible that there might be some additional storage or something that may go into that house, but it's not the intention to use that structure for anything else, any
So
new
will
uses.
nobody will live there.
That is correct.
That's not what the original was, so.
Correct.
This is changed, just so that we all know, because I thought we were looking at it all.
That is correct. So no one's living there. No, what the structure is not intended to be used for anything, if anything, minimal indoor storage for materials to be used on site.
I happened to do a tour of the site probably 2 months ago, whenever we first looked at this.
Mhm.
And it looked like they were actually doing some initial renovation of a portion
Mhm.
of the house as a residence at that time, but that's gone away now.
That is correct. So that was kind of initially how this whole process started, was through that building process. And then we said, well, wait a minute, you're going to need a little bit more approvals here because of the renovation that was intended for, in part, for a residential home. And then we said the township doesn't allow that per the zoning ordinance. And so then we were like, you have to go back to the planning commission to get your site plan approved for a new structure. And that's how it landed on your desk.
Right?
So with that, like in reading the notes when this was first approved, there was concern over the sizing of the septic field.
Mm.
So I was gonna raise that possibly as a concern, but
Mhm.
I don't know, Kent County will probably take care of that. So the fact that the house is gonna be retired and there won't be any septic generated there, does that alleviate the burden of maybe the septic field being undersized? Has anybody looked at that? Because I noticed the drawings also don't, we usually require like the location of the field and the
Mhm.
well, and I couldn't find those.
Yeah, so I can let the applicant speak to that a little bit more on the intention for how they want to hook up everything. But typically those types of, those tasks of a project are typically flagged during the building process. So while it is important, of course, to understand the location of the well and septic and so forth for your purposes, that of course, there wouldn't be any detriment at that point because that would get flagged before anything would happen. Any further questions before I continue? Okay. So according to the applicant, Shaggy Pines Dog Park is open daily from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the indoor training facility is proposed to be open 1 to 2 days a week from around 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Classes are intended to be held 1 to 2 days a week and accommodate roughly 4 to 8 dogs per session. If approved, the new barn-style building will be the principal structure on site. So therefore, that is why the notice of the type 1 special land use of an accessory structure exceeding 832 square feet came up, because the new building would then serve as the principal structure, whereas the existing building would then be accessory or incidental to that principal structure, which would then make an accessory structure. However, given that that existing structure is give or take 1,700 square feet in size, the applicant needed special land use, type 1 special use approval for that accessory structure exceeding 832 square feet. So with regard to, so I guess backing up, if the commission is under the consensus to continue this approval under as a kennel as the way that it has been done, then I do not feel the need to go through the special land use criteria for type 2 because it would not be applicable in this sense. However, standards applicable to accessory buildings, I'll just kind of briefly go through this. The site itself is very heavily wooded. There's a lot of mature growth trees, both fronting Cherry Lane Avenue as well as on the north side of the site and the south side of the site. It is through staff's review and analysis of the site that there likely would not be any adverse effects with regard to line of sight or inappropriate land uses or inappropriate building architecture that would be out of character for the ARC district or any adjacent properties. Further, it is the intention that the applicant intends to preserve existing mature growth trees. There wouldn't be any big demolition or construction activities on site aside from the construction of the new proposed building. It has also been determined at this time that it is not likely that any additional parking would be needed, given that the intensity of the existing use is not intended to change, in that basically all existing operations are just going to be shifted to a new building. So at that time, that's why you didn't see the parking or anything like that kind of delineated on the site plans, because staff had felt that the applicant is not asking for new uses. The applicant's not asking for intensity of uses to accommodate more people, more dogs, so forth, so forth. Further to that point, the township has not received any complaints from neighbors or anything, anybody that, you know, has raised concern about activities on site, barking dogs, lack of parking. So at that point, staff determined that it's likely the existing conditions are appropriate to continue forward. Yeah.
With that in mind, though, looking at the drawing, the parking lot is really convenient to what will become the auxiliary building. Then there are no sidewalks connecting to the new barn, which would be the primary structure. So will that parking lot in fact work, or is that just kind of short-sighted for now?
So I have not, given that the site plan notes, you know, there's no clear connection between the two structures. It is not to my knowledge that there is an intention to connect those structures. However, I do think that there could be conversation through the planning commission's deliberation to take a look at that as perhaps a condition. Maybe it's a gravel, you know, stepping path or something to that effect to kind of help direct folks to the right building. Whereas current members may be used to going to the other building and not realizing that the new one is the one that they should be primarily attending. That is a good point. Thank you. With regard to setbacks, the existing or the proposed building meets all required setback requirements as well as maximum building height. I should note that the zoning ordinance does not include any schedule of regulations with regard to setback or maximum height for non-residential structures in the ARC district. So the notes that are on here today are staff's interpretation of the zoning ordinance, and that applies to both residential structures and non-residential. So I just kind of wanted to note that too, that this one's kind of a little bit of a different type of application that you typically see for an ARC district. The existing driveway appears to be roughly about 18 feet in width. The building is not easily viewed from the street, especially during spring and summer months with full foliage. Admittedly, I haven't seen it since all the leaves have fallen, but it is, you know, set back at least 800 feet from Cherry Lane Avenue. That would likely not cause any adverse effects with regard to traffic congestion or anything of that nature, people going in and out. Moving to staff's recommendations, we are recommending approval for type 1 special use permit for the continual existence of an accessory structure exceeding 832 square feet upon several conditions. The first of which, that any outdoor lighting meets requirements of township ordinance. The second, that any stormwater runoff will remain on site. The third, the accessory building shall be used solely for accessory activities incidental to the principal use and shall not be used as a residential dwelling. And then, of course, fourth, that the applicant receives all required permits and approvals prior to any construction. I shouldn't say, any applicable construction. However, with this still continuing as a type 2 kennel, I would say that if there are additional conditions that the planning commission through your deliberation would like to place on that that type 2 special land use for a kennel, then I would recommend that those get move forward into a condition of approval. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Again, in reading through the notes, it appears that the actual PC meeting versus what went to the board kind of have a mismatch. In the PC meeting, staff presented additionally 2 conditionals. But it appears Member McDonald proposed additional stipulations, numbers 4, 5, and 6. Member Lewis accepted the additional conditioning, but it appears those never made it to the board. The board approved with the 2 staff. There was no mention that there was an additional 4 items. So should we capture those? One is the lighting you're capturing already, but one of them was, well, I guess it was, maybe I misspoke there. Yours is about downlighting. Theirs was specifically lighting will be downcast and turned off at 9 p.m. We capture that anywhere? How do we, they have rules. Are there rules made part of our record like we did for the cemetery? But the cemetery rules became part of the motion. Does his current rules on the dog park become part of the motion? Because they cite a lot of, there'll be a fence, the gate will be closed. How do we capture that meaning?
If I may, so the township board in a type 2 special land use has the final authority. So at that, because it is a type 2, the planning commission has their approval, and ultimately that approval more or less functions as a recommendation of approval with several conditions. And at that point, because the township board holds the final, and please, legal, correct me if I'm wrong, because the township board holds that final approval authority, that whatever conditions that they impose at that time would then be the conditions that carry forward.
Exactly. And I think what happened is historically what happens a lot.
Just gets lost.
Yeah,
in the
it
shuffle.
it was
I think,
whatever
yeah.
was on the agenda got put to the board and
Exactly.
nothing else got included. But I don't think that it's fair to go back now and impose those restrictions. And again, I think I have questions for the applicant just to verify, but people are there later than 9 o'clock, right? People are there later than 9 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I thought this was current hours, so I don't think it was a big
Because
change.
that's the thing, like, I hate to put restrictions on that were never followed if nobody's having, no neighbors are having any concerns with them. But if they're,
Fully agree.
yeah, but if there are conditions that they are following and the
Then let's-
neighbors are happy with them
Let's
because that's
document
what's
them?
happening, yes.
Okay, we're on the same page. I like that thought.
Yeah.
If they work, let's make sure that we've
Right,
got
so
it.
I think we'll have to ask the applicant just to make sure that what was listed there, even though the board didn't approve it previously, that we make sure that we include them in our restrictions or our conditions.
Because often what happens is, my issue is called creep. Scope creep. They're gonna,
Exactly.
it's gonna.
So. I don't-
We'll have you up in just a second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just breezing through the requirements for a kennel just to make sure that all of those are compliant with this request. It does appear so far minimum 2 acres meets that. Shall not be any buildings for the housing of animals, runs or exercise area should not be within 100 feet of any property line. That the request also is compliant with that condition or requirement, I should say. The rest look like they're not really applicable. Adequate off-street parking shall be required. Signs shall be subject to regulations of township. So just to note, I guess for the good of the record.
Could I jump in for a second?
Yes.
Were you looking at the kennel require, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right section, but chapter 17 special uses, the section F kennel requirements?
Yes.
Do you have concern about kennel is 2 acres plus an additional 1/3 acre for each animal in excess of 6?
Think. Minimum 2 acres.
So that's what, 19 acres? If you have 60 animals, that's 20 acres.
So, I mean,
But that,
and maybe this is a good question for the applicant in that, did you say 60 animals or 16?
6.
Oh, 6. Oh, sorry, the requirements referring to.
Well, how many
Yeah.
acres?
I
is
thought
this?
you said
I
something
raised that
else.
because
I think ironically, it's the perfect match though, right? Isn't this 20
That's
acres?
weird, but
Yeah.
when I think kennel, I think, and I realize I've read the definition, but definitions don't necessarily exclude the dictionary or the lexical definition of the word either. Kennel to me is boarding. I think that's
I
what the intention
agree.
of it was. So I'm not sure
That's
that
the
this
hard
needs to
part.
be
Right, because I
characterized
think
as a
that,
kennel.
I could be wrong, because that's, again, going ahead of myself, that's one of my questions for the applicant. I don't think right now the neighbors want boarding, that's not what's happening now. So
Mhm.
I'm torn between, I don't love private outdoor rec use, but I don't know
I'm
if
not
kennel's
sure it's a
right,
kennel.
you know what I mean? Like, I just don't.
I mean, words have meanings, and maybe the British meaning for kennel is different than the American definition, but I'm not sure where we got this definition to begin with. But when you kennel a dog, it's because you're going to Italy for a month. It's not because you're taking it to a dog park.
Right, there is an implication, I think, just in the dictionary definition of the word, that it's some kind of.
Like you're
boarding,
leaving it.
Restraining.
leaving it.
But do we go by the
So,
Oxford Dictionary definition or go by the definition that we explicitly have in the ordinance?
right, so, and that's a
Maybe
good
we
question,
should state
because
where we get the
usually.
definition from, at least.
I'll get into the academic legal writing,
Okay.
drafting definitions part of it, but you can say sometimes kennel means or kennel includes, and one can be more expansive than the other. This is just kennel : any place on which 5 or more dogs, cats, or other household pets 4 months or age of older are kept either temporarily or permanently for any reason other than veterinary medicine, including board, breeding, or sale. Does it say boarding? It does say kept. And I'm not sure you're keeping, in the sense, when we say kennel is somewhere where dogs are kept, that includes a dog park.
Yeah, but on the other hand, in the application, they say many times we're putting up an inner and outer fence to keep the dogs inside.
From going somewhere else, but not, yeah, so you could probably argue that.
It's a tense.
When I saw the outdoor recreational use, that made sense to me more so than kennel, but I won't go farther than that, except to say, if you are gonna go with kennel, I think just think about the acreage requirement.
That's a good point. And I also, something else now that we're like mowing through this, that it does say 4 months or age and older. Does that exclude then somebody bringing their new puppy to the dog park if it's under the definition of a kennel? Something to think about.
You don't like puppies?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Oh,
I wouldn't.
more
want my
than,
puppy
okay,
there.
I
so
don't have
4
dogs.
months is a good cutoff. Got it.
So,
Okay.
so ironically, I'm willing to do some mental math out loud here, but 60 dogs he's expecting, anything old, and you need 2 to have the 6. So he's got 18 left. He has 54 for every 8, what was it? For
Yeah, I gotta
every,
jump back down to it. For every
6.
1/3 acre for each animal in excess of 6.
yep, so,
Oh my God.
yeah, so it's 20 perfectly, so it works well.
And I don't know.
But if you
What
have
I
another
what I
dog
kind of like
park-
about it is I agree, it's very ambiguous and
It's a horrible
squishy.
definition.
but at least it captures, when someone's looking at it, it has
A dog.
a dog, like, otherwise it's just,
I know, but.
it's too close to a golf, but
That's what I was thinking originally, but hearing what you, my concern is that we're gonna call it a kennel, and that initially, when I read through some of this, thinking, oh, somebody wants to be living there. To monitor things, and I thought, oh, they're gonna turn this into not what I think the current intent is. It is a dog park, so that's where now talking through it more, I agree, I guess, with the private outdoor rec use, even though I don't know if that's the appropriate name either. But it is a outdoor rec use. It's private, you have to be a member.
Rob?
So just because we specifically say the definition of a kennel states, we should say where that definition comes from, I think. But I already said that. Looking at that same page though, page 2, 2 paragraphs down, just a general comment.
what PDF page?
I'm sorry, the PDF page is 40. So it says the township files indicate complaints, right, regarding barking dogs.
Mhm.
Then it says no further complaints have been received, but in between those two ideas, it says it appears those complaints have been resolved. I don't think that necessarily follows, Because you can complain about something a bunch of times, and if nothing ever happens, you just say, oh, well, I guess I'll just stop complaining. Doesn't mean anything's been fixed. That's a jump, just saying.
So I should note that perhaps a clarification there in that back in 2003 or 2004, there were complaints that have since been rectified in the sense that there was enforcement action taking place, and perhaps the applicant can speak to this a little bit further too, since he, of course, has more institutional knowledge than I have. But I can't speak to the exact enforcement action that was taking place at that time, but what I can say is that it's been 20 years and no one has said anything since, and according to township files. So I suppose that doesn't mean it was resolved, but it does mean that at least folks aren't actively upset about it.
Okay.
But perhaps a good note for the applicant to clarify what actions were taken at that time.
Any other questions for Danielle? Okay, why don't we ask Mr. Wright to come up?
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
No, sorry, I have one question just because. Minutes, but none of the neighbors came last time when this was. Right, okay, that's all.
Okay, introduce yourself.
I'm Bruce Wright, Shaggy Pines Dog Park, 3895 Cherry Lane.
Welcome.
And I thank everybody else for all the work, especially Danielle putting that together for us. I appreciate that. I can give you a backdrop or I can answer questions however you want to do it.
Give us a little history and some of the background.
Yeah, so Shaggy Pines it's a great place. I don't know if you've been had a chance to be at it. It's I encourage anyone who likes dogs to come on out. It's been there for 20 years, as you now know. My wife and I bought it about 6 months ago, June 10th. We live in the area. We knew it was going for sale. We knew it was likely going to be developed into, home sites, that type of thing. And we thought it would be a good idea to keep it a dog park. The people there are very passionate about dogs. It's a great place, and there aren't a lot of places like that where you can have your dog off lead and just let them run 20 acres and play in the pond and the woods and stuff like that. So it's a cool thing, whether you're a dog person or not. That was our intent. It is 20 years old and has not been invested in. So a lot of the things they do out there are really cramped for space. You can't have training and have the clubhouse open. There's really not adequate space for a workshop or to park the vehicles, which are tractors and mowers and golf carts and things like that. So our intent was to upgrade it and kind of put a little more life into it and upgrade the clubhouse, that type of thing.
Also major investment building this barn.
Yeah, it is. But again, we kind of want to do it right. We want to have training, even more training if possible, and that type of thing, and make it, that's the way we do things. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. As to how you classify this, I would much prefer to leave it the way it is. It was never our request to change the zoning. If it's adequate, it's worked for 20 years. To me, it does most represent a kennel, even though definitions, you can split that however you want to. But it's fine the way it is. It's working the way it is. We don't plan to change things significantly. Would we ever have kenneling there? It's not in our plan. We certainly wouldn't do it on a large scale, but our members, if they had a request for us to watch their dog for them, we'd consider that. But it's not part of what we want to do. But all of that said, I'd rather not have to take it to a planning board and things like that and go another step to change things that have been working for 20 years.
Questions for Mr. Wright? Ryan?
I different packets. I'm trying not to have the burden of the last meeting, but I'm worried about this ADU, and I know it's not in here anymore, but when I hear that renovations were started, so you're completely comfortable with the fact that you've apparently sunk some good money into a renovation that's now.
Yeah, we're disappointed with that because we thought it was approved. But there was confusion about it, so we had a builder coming in to start that. He's sidelined that, and we stopped it where it's at.
I'm just gonna say, which is muddying the waters even worse. There was a house to begin with.
It's a business now.
I know, but it will come back to us at some point, I'm sure, but I don't see why. It's not like it was a barn that they're converting, which is against what we normally would do. This is building a barn and converting a home back to a home. I don't really see the big deal. That's my opinion.
Really? For the fact they're running a business? So if the new law firm that's going in on 28th Street, they wanted to live above
They
it?
don't live, there's not a house
There was a
there now.
house there before.
It's not a
It
house.
burned
now.
down.
No, it doesn't matter. It's gone. They're building something different. This was a home that people apparently lived in over 20 years ago. And to convert it back to a home and to have to build a barn and a business in the back, I don't see a problem. But again, that might come back to us at some point in the future. I just think it was.
That was our A solution.
over-
I heard loud and
overcomplicated when it
clear,
didn't need to be.
we couldn't do it, but that's what we'd love to do. That's what our, our previous application included, that third leg
Mhm.
to convert that into living care. And our, we were able to use it for our son, to kind of keep an eye on and manage the park.
Mhm.
It wasn't, for
What's
developing.
interesting, as long as we're having the conversation, I'm just fearful it's gonna be like the one fence we approved. That will be an ADU can opening. So if we're gonna allow that, so we're gonna have people line up for ADUs.
Yeah, this is it's not the same. This is a house. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm just
Okay.
gonna say,
Well, no, I agree.
it might come back to us at some point. You do whatever you have to do. We talked about I wasn't there. The whole point is you split a lot and put it as a house and you have plenty of acreage to do it and to have a barn, which is a business. I just think it's.
Well, yeah, quite frankly, I agree with you. Not that I disagree with you, but I mean, that would be, it would be real estate gymnastics for us to now split it to keep that as a house. It'd be a shame to not use that house for something.
And just,
So
yeah.
I'd rather not go through real estate gymnastics to try and make that work and split it and stuff like that, but
All right, well, we talks, I think we got. So we're not in discussion yet, so I'll wait for this to close. And I'll
Other questions for
talk
Mr. Wright?
here over here.
I have questions about the kenneling thing. Again, it's a sticky point. There's a great need for kenneling in the area, but, and goes back to the definition where I'm a little worried that if we do use it as a kenneling situation, he could easily just start doing kenneling, having to come back, and that is something that I think is something different, and that goes back
We
to
just put a condition on there.
because I do think that's different from what it's currently being used, even though it might be a better definition of what is being done. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
As you guys are kind of talking through this, that one thing that I would advise to think about is that if this approval does move forward as a kennel, then how could you say our condition is that this isn't operating as a kennel,
Mhm.
even though the approval is for a kennel?
I agree.
Unless if you word it in a way of upon the condition that there's no on-site boarding or something to that effect maybe, but
I think that's exactly.
I
what
would
we
just
do, I
be
think.
careful about the terms maybe in that approval condition or in your condition.
Can you write that down for us?
but let me ask a question. I didn't request a private outdoor recreation use. I didn't request it at all. It is approved for what is approved. All I want to do is build a barn.
I agree with you. I like keeping it.
Yeah, but he
So
also doesn't want to restrict.
I certainly don't want to restrict it. It's not my intent, but it's been approved 20 years ago as is with
That's where-
the current restrictions.
And you continue to use it that way.
And I'm not here to
Well,
ask
it
for
is.
anything
And-
different on that.
And you
So
and you already mentioned,
I'd prefer to strike request number 1 and deliberate on request number 2. I want to build a barn on our site, keep everything else the same.
I would be, hold on, let me make sure before I open my mouth, to want to look at.
What is the
From my
plan?
knowledge, I would agree with that statement.
What is the plan for septic and water then? I know.
Yeah, it's a good question, and Danielle kind of hit it. We don't anticipate any increased septic requirement. The builder that,
Can you just back up 1 second? Do you know where your septic? We always require in a site plan to
Right.
see where it is. Like, is it possible you're presenting a barn on top of the current septic?
no, we're not. I don't have the drawing here in front of me. It's just adjacent to the parking lot between the two.
Between the two.
So the
It's
current builder thinks
accessible. They would be
likely
able
you
to
could
use
tie
it.
into it. If you couldn't, he'd put in more septic, but
Oh, and
it's,
same with the water. He's gonna tie into the current water to use in the new building.
he doesn't see any reason you can't, right?
And the water is a well.
Water's a well.
I appreciate your comment. I do kind of agree to strike the first. I think we can put it, and then we get away from the, so can I ask that question? Taking his comment, I really like that, and then I think it alleviates. So if we elected to, I don't know what we do. So if we elected not to deliberate on the first item, a type 2 special use permit, we just said we're gonna pretend we didn't see that. And we went to purely a type 1, a barn, and we explicitly state that barn shall not be used for kenneling. Then we don't have this issue of we're authorizing a kennel. We didn't authorize, kennel's done. We're not open that can of worms. We're not rehashing that can of worms. Is that something we could do cleaner?
So we were actually sidebarring about, I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what the or the township board did in 2003. So that's why we were whispering over here, and I understand it wasn't approved as a kennel or as a private record, they just approved a dog park, right? But to your point, if you just approved the barn tonight and left the other alone, I think the intention was because dog park at the time it was approved wasn't actually something that was in the zoning ordinance. The idea was, since you're here, let's clean this up and make sure all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, that it is approved as of use in the township, so that somebody doesn't come later and take issue with what you're doing and say, hey, you can't have this here. This was never actually something, dog park wasn't in the zoning ordinance.
But it's still not zoning ordinance, right? So we're
So we would
doing
be
the same
fitting
thing
it
they
into
did.
something that is, right? But at the time, as I'm understanding it, it wasn't fit into something that was in the ordinance. They just said, okay, dog park approved. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, or saying that
Well,
what
that's
you're
not how I
doing
read
is,
it, though.
yeah.
So that's how you read it? I thought they read it. When I read it, which could be wrong, I thought they essentially approved it as a kennel.
That's what we were talking about. And
Yeah, so if I
They
may
did.
clarify, the staff report back in 2003 stated that the planning director at the time determined that a kennel was the most similar use as to what was being requested. However, if the motion is noted in the minutes, however that's presented either as a dog park or kennel.
The motion was per staff recommendation, and I think per staff recommendation, the closest fit was a kennel, so I think it was approved as a kennel.
Yeah, it was fully described as a dog park, essentially as it is 20 years later.
But if they want
I
to
think they-
change it into an actual kennel at this point, that's okay too, right? Because we've said, go ahead and make a kennel.
no, I don't think like a site plan for a boarding kennel has ever been approved.
Because I think what he's saying, we'll keep it what was in the past. All we're
So
approving
back
is
to
the
your
building.
page 44, I think, 43, 44. 43, 44.
All we're doing is approving the structure.
Correct. Actually, I said that wrong. 44, 45. So the bottom of 44, we're not going to even acknowledge that exists, I guess. We're going to go to type 1 special use permit, and we'll make a conditional that it shall not be used for kennel, well, for
Boarding.
boarding.
I'd use that word.
Yeah, because then it allows for the
Clearer.
training and the other things that are happening, but not overnight boarding.
Yeah, no overnight stays.
Again, that's not our plan, but what would it have to happen then if we wanted to use it for boarding?
You'd have to come back.
Yeah, you
first.
come
I
back
mean-
with the site plan proposal with the details for the boarding, and that would need to be approved as a special land use.
And that would be fair to your neighbors, so then.
Yeah.
they would have A voice to be able to come if they said. we
For
don't
what
want
it's worth, I did talk to all of our neighbors, and we haven't had any complaints, but someone had voiced, hey, did they just give up? And they all love the idea of a dog park there rather than something else, and they're very amenable to it.
Then 40 houses.
What's that?
Instead of the
Exactly.
40 houses.
I mean, there's a farm on one side and
I'm assuming we can, but this seems like a degree of freedom we don't normally do. So can we also in the permit for the auxiliary building, which accessory building, which becomes the primary, can we also state that the former primary, new accessory shall not be used for dwelling, just like
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I think Danielle explained this, and I think that we're on the same page, that The accessory building that we're approving is not the new structure. That's the primary building on the site. The accessory building is the existing building.
The house.
It's so bizarre. Okay.
Yeah.
So the
And
new
so
building
that's why
becomes
it's
the
this-
primary building and the previous
size of
house
a
now
lot, they
becomes
can't have
the
two?
accessory building.
They can have.
Is that correct?
Okay, so
Wait, hang on, no, it's the size of this lot, they should be able to have two, right?
For two accessory buildings,
Yeah.
yes, but you can't have an accessory building without a primary structure. The
And they do-
primary use on this property is the dock.
and they do have two accessory. If you look on the drawing, there's a shed. So they will have two accessory buildings, but the new,
You gotta call one a primary.
but so. All right, so let me ask, so my question is still valid. I just had the wrong
Yeah,
verbiage,
no.
I guess. So the type 1 special use permit, when we say it can't be used as a dwelling, that's covering the home he started renovations on.
Is that some different?
How do we capture the structure about to be built also can't be used for dwelling because this is
Because it's a
business?
given in
It's a
the
given?
fact that it's the primary accessory building. Accessory buildings currently cannot be used as a dwelling.
Well, I think that's what, it's not a primary accessory, it's a primary building. There's primary, there's accessory. If it's the I'd say the opposite. The inference is you could dwell there, which is why I don't want to happen.
Rob,
So the new building is going to become the primary building and the current house that was having renovations will become the auxiliary or the
accessory,
accessory building, correct?
that's why I hear
Okay.
it going.
So Ryan's saying we don't want people living in the new building.
In the new
Correct.
accessory,
Go
in
ahead.
the new accessory building.
So I guess cutting the chase, can we in the approval of something that exists cover something that's about to be built?
So if I may, the proposed structure or the new principal structure. On the site plan, this is the same as if you would have any other site plan process in front of you. If they were presenting a dwelling unit within the structure, that would be on your site plan. So I don't think that you guys would need to put a condition of approval upon the fact that nobody lives in that structure, because that's not what they're approved for, because they have the site plan that says specifically, we are going to do training and classes and so forth, so forth. So I would just say this is the same as if any other site plan that comes.
Baked in.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes,
Yep.
it's the first that makes most sense to me.
It's a complicated one because we're trying to kind of clean up some inconsistencies of what happened, 20 years ago and try to bring it into what current requirements are in the zoning ordinance. But because there's existing and all that, it gets.
Well, that actually
I'm just gonna-
simplifies
I'm
some
just
of my
gonna say, when I
concerns.
read through this, other than living in the. I don't know why it's even here. I feel like this is all stuff they can do. Am I wrong? Like you can build, he has two buildings.
But I think you're missing, it's a business.
I know.
And just because a business in the country doesn't make it less of a business.
No, but I'm
So-
saying, but we're
so-
not talking, we're not gonna change anything with the current business. We just discussed that. We're not changing anything about what they currently do. Right?
We're not. That's why we're striking that out. We're just going to the second
That's what
one.
I'm saying. That's
Okay.
why I don't understand why this is here, but okay, go ahead,
Rob,
make a motion.
Do we have any other examples of private commercial businesses in ARC districts in Cascade?
Yep.
Right now.
Wormies.
Warmies, I think that there is, some
Yeah.
nurseries. There's some farms that don't include actual primary living.
I've heard there are some at some of the vet clinics.
I
Do.
don't know about that.
Yeah.
What
There's
about-
one.
What about 36th Street Nursery?
Art, I don't think they-
That was a house and it's now their reception area, right?
Mhm.
So you're saying if they decided they wanted to move back into that, it's good? Possibly?
I'm not saying anything right now. We're gonna focus on what we're doing.
All right, so
keep it simple.
should I make a motion?
Yep.
May I
Yes.
make
Please.
a suggestion before you do? You do want to approve this site, plan, correct? Is the site plan approval then over
If we're gonna talk about the
Yes.
site plan, let's talk about the sidewalk again. He never addressed that. We didn't ask him. From the parking lot to the new structure. It's not on the site plan. Are you gonna do a little sidewalk? How do you
Yeah,
want
well,
to do
so the way that this works, we wouldn't change the way that people enter the park right now. They don't really enter through the clubhouse. They enter, it's a little hard to pick up here, but there's a gated thing they use with their phone for a fob to enter through a walkway. That would still be the primary way to enter the park, and they would come, they'd walk around to the new clubhouse. But I would intend to make it handicap accessible. So off of that driveway, we would have whatever the requirement would be in terms of sidewalk off of the driveway, just right there adjacent to the new building, not from the old building to the new one, just.
That's a tough one though, because I think I think zero expertise, so I probably venturing too far, and I'm not well, after I stick my foot in my mouth. But I think if you're gonna have an ADA parking, I think there's an ADA requirement that parking can only be so far from your front door, which I think inherently is gonna mean your parking lot's gonna have to move, which kind of becomes very, even more convoluted on something that's already convoluted, correct?
I think that's a building. That has to be certain. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm not sure we wanna,
So building department should address that issue.
but then it changes the site plan.
I think
In what way?
if you had to move the parking lot closer to the building, because ADA, you can't have a parking lot that far, their parking can't be that far away.
At least parking spaces for
For
barrier-free
right.
handicap access.
Well, again, the park itself is the current handicapped spots are right there at the entrance to it. So technically, nothing would change there either. And if it ran into a problem with building issues, I wouldn't change anything.
But I guess what I'm trying to explain is that
Because
I
they
think
have
where
to
the
be close
parking
to the-
lots are currently are
Close to
near
the other building.
your primary clubhouse.
Yeah, but
Since
the
that's
club,
gonna be inactivated, your primary clubhouse over here, so I don't know.
yeah, but again, the clubhouse isn't, it's a little difficult to describe, but people, it's rare that they come into the clubhouse when they're using the park. That's where the administrative stuff is done. We don't currently have, we have,
I think.
No
I think
wheelchairs,
Andy's words,
disabled
it's
people.
ancillary. He's saying the clubhouse is kind of ancillary. They're there to walk their dogs in the park.
and so the way they currently do it is the way they would in the future do it.
If I may, I just did some quick research and according to ADA guidelines, it says parking spaces must be quote, shortest accessible route, end quote, and there's no specific distance. Perfect.
And that's how they currently are.
Get it as close as you can.
And if I also may clarify too, Wendy, for your comment that because a new structure is proposed, that you guys would have had to approve it. So it would have had to your point of like, this feels a little, like a lot for a little bit. We feel that as well, as I'm sure our applicant also feels that.
Ryan?
Without having to search through here, you have a current set of rules and regulations, I believe. If you reference like the hours of the park. and
Oh,
if
for the
okay,
members, yes.
Is there a title for that? If I wanted to reference that in my motion, that we would like to add those to the records so that we know kind of your current operating, just call it your rules and regulations, or what would I call it?
That's, that would be close enough.
Close enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Member-
All right, so feel free to fix this. This is my first, all right.
Hang on a second. Are there any more questions for Mr. Wright? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks again for your
Actually, I have
deliberation.
one more.
Nope.
We do appreciate you're keeping more native area, and we're trying to make this, I think, as accommodating, at least I am. I think we agree that you want to keep it with the kennel terminology. What you're sensing we're about to say, is that kind of in line? Like you have an issue with what you're,
To me, that's the simplest way to go about it.
All right.
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
And we do appreciate having Shady Pines Dog Park in the
Good.
area. It's a great facility.
Yeah, Member Bruno, as you're adding things for your motion, if you want to reference the building as described in the site plan submitted. So we know that's the building that they're building.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In the case number 243866, type 1 special use permit for the building captured in the site plan. The Cascade Township Planning Department recommends approval of the special land use for an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet in area with the following conditions. Any outdoor lighting meets the requirements of the township ordinance. Any stormwater runoff will remain on site. The accessory building shall only be used for accessory activities incidental to the principal use and shall not be used as a residential dwelling. The applicant receives permits and approvals for all required construction activities from the Township Planning Department and Building Department. I've already forgot one. Number 5 would be the rules and regulations currently governing members shall become part of the site plan by reference, so we know the baseline of operation currently. Can someone help me with the one I'm missing? Thought I had number 6.
The dog boarding, no.
Oh,
dog
thank you,
boarding.
thank you. The big one, we talked about it for an hour. And finally, number 6. That there shall be no boarding on parcel number 41-19-23-100-008.
Any amendments to that?
Any concerns?
My only thing, well, we might have different ones. Mine's minor. Can they ever change their rules or regulations? We don't know what they say.
I think the biggest thing is the hours of operation.
Yeah. So
Well,
just, or do
we
you just
like
want
that
them
they're
on
picking-
file?
You don't have a
Well, but what if they decide that they're not gonna pick up after their dogs? And it currently does. That's what I'm trying to capture.
Yeah, I just, since we don't have them, I just don't want
I agree.
to be
'cause I
locked
think-
into, they can never change their,
Right. 'cause I-
whatever rules they
right,
have.
'cause I do think that part of what they are thinking about changing is adding training.
Or if they
I-
decide to
I
have
feel
puppy
concerned
hour
about
once a day, I
hours.
don't know.
Hours of
Right.
operation.
I mean, really, I'd have to go reappoint myself with the rules, but it's more, your dogs have to have these vaccinations and these types of things. It's not
That's what I'm trying to
anything that
capture.
would affect anybody outside of the park, so.
In reading all the minutes previously, they were worried about one gate being open, other one's being open simultaneously, the dog getting out. He's saying that
But-
they have a protocol that the gates are closed. I'm trying to capture that.
But
so the
that's-
dogs aren't running
What I'm
free.
saying is that's not in there.
Oh,
It's
it's not.
more, hey, you have to be in control of your dog, you have to have flu vaccines, they have to have this type of thing. It's not anything that really affects anybody outside of the park, so it
All
wouldn't
right.
accomplish what you're trying to do there.
All right, let me try again. Take 2. Scratch
You want
that.
to scratch 5?
Yeah, can I do that? Just scratch 5? That makes it easier. Okay.
Yes.
Can I finish this real quick? Before I forget, Then I'm not cutting you off. Replacing the previous number 5 with the general rules and regulations as documented in the application regarding keying and gates and refuse pickup and vaccinations shall be the baseline, and if any of that changes, and hours of operations, and any of that changes, they must come back before the planning commission.
That's all in the application, right?
I believe so. That's why I just said reference in the application. If
I
any of
would
that
say-
changes.
All documentation provided by the applicant and testimony is included. Everything, the documentation provided for this application.
I think what member Vanessa is a little more specific. I'm okay with that. So if you're gonna extend your order of your hours of operation, you would need to come back and make sure the planning commission's okay.
Right.
Can you live with that?
I can live with that. I'm not sure I can give you a document that addresses
no.
what you
It's
want
in
to
It's
do.
the
You already
opposite.
did.
Okay.
You already did.
Yep.
That's the fact that the previous, probably, I don't know if you've read this whole package.
Right.
When it first came up in 2003, they talked about hours and
Right.
picking up.
Yep, fine.
That's all captured as part of the record.
Good.
Okay,
Right, hold it.
Rob,
Yep,
you
no,
have a
Rob, sorry,
question?
Rob.
Well, this maybe doesn't apply to the applicant that's up there. I just wondered when people make comments like, well, we'd rather have a dog park than 20 houses or whatever. What's the parcel lot size requirement east of Buttrick? Like if you were to develop houses? I don't
We can,
think-
we can have discussion though. I mean,
Was it seconded?
I'll second it.
All right,
Then we
now
can
you
have
can discuss.
Okay. Motion has been made and it's been seconded.
Now we can finish this discussion.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
thank you. So, I mean, you couldn't put 20 houses on a 19-acre parcel east of Buckeye anyway.
East of,
What could they have? Can you answer the question?
On a 20-acre parcel, the ARC, if everything was split and everything for, to make it all those, and you could probably have 9 houses.
Really? I thought, for some reason, I was thinking it was like a 4-acre minimum east of Buttrick. That's not correct.
2-acre.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on what has been on the motion?
what is the uneloquently motion?
No, you did great. Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
3-1, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now that you're not gonna be in the office all the time. Kind of sad.
Okay, moving on, Article 9, the 2025 proposed meeting schedule. Andrea?
Pack up.
I know I already X'd out of everything.
Yeah, this wasn't,
This,
so was this on the agenda that's up on the website? Because this wasn't on the agenda that was sent to us.
yes, this is, the agenda was updated.
Right.
So
It'd
this,
be nice if you'd sent it, it'd be nice if you'd send it to us.
so this went to the board on 12/10, and was approved, yes. The planning, our ordinance for planning commission is big planning commission. And looks at their agendas on the time, first meeting out. So this is the approved by the board, planning commission.
So you're saying two different things. I don't believe the board approves, we set our dates and times. And the board approves that. So it's gone a little bit out of order. The board can approve it, but the board approved your draft. The board didn't approve anything that we approved.
That's true.
We set our own times.
Question for you.
Yes.
Process wise.
And then we have another one, but sure.
Okay, does the planning commission
Finish
have
that.
to approve it before it goes to the board for the?
I've got to
meeting
look
schedule?
at what your ordinance and bylaws say. But housekeeping matter, there was supposed to actually be a public hearing on that last item that you've already approved? Or did you?
For the accessory structure, what's the?
Yeah, last month it was.
Okay, that's what Danielle just raised.
I
I
thought it was
wanted to make sure.
I apologize.
Okay, so false alarm, all good.
Okay, I was like,
All
I
right.
think that all was public comment. last
Yeah.
month.
Yep,
We
all right,
try
just want to
to-
make sure, and then I'll get to your other,
No, I'm sorry.
nope, that's all right.
Yeah, the agenda didn't talk about public hearing on this.
Well, because
Oh.
the request kind of
Thank
got
you.
shifted, I just wanted to be sure that.
So while you're looking that up, but I'm pretty sure the Michigan Planning Enabling Act says, because we put in our bylaws when we sat in the,
Our bylaws.
it is, but we copied those from the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan says any time and place to be determined by the, and if you remember, you and I had the conversation about, I wanted it to continue monthly, and you said at least quarterly, I think is what we ended up going with. We went with something really minimal.
It doesn't. I guess what's your question?
So I guess my question, I want to have some debate over this. So I think I speak for several people who've been flustered this year that our meetings have gone really long, which inherently then makes them late. And I think because we haven't had a good cadence, we've missed many. So I looked back at the previous year, and I can't find it real quick here, but I believe so if you look at the proposal, January 6th, January 20th, that makes sense, following the normal cadence. In February, we're doing this, the proposal is the 3rd, and then I think the next one would be Martin Luther King Day. Or it's President's Day, I'm not really sure, to be honest. It's a national holiday. So what we did the previous year is we staggered. I think we went the 10th and the 24th. So we kept 2 meetings in the month, but we pushed. March is the same, April's the same, May is the same, June's the same, July is the same, August is the same. September, we did the same thing. We, due to Labor Day, I think we said, okay, we're gonna skip that first Monday of the month, and we're gonna go 2nd and 4th. I would like to propose that we give that some serious consideration. I know we have a lot on the agenda this coming year with Danielle presenting sections of a new zoning ordinance. And I think there's a lot of material, and I have no affection for these 4-hour marathons that we've had. So, any thoughts on having more and keeping them shorter, a couple hours each, as opposed to
I would concur.
every other one?
I don't mind how they are. Matter of fact, in a perfect world, I think we should get down to 1 meeting a month and the second one as needed, but that's my opinion.
I would agree with that, but we have too much material. So you want to do a 4-hour meeting?
No,
No.
but I also want to say, when we talk about the zoning stuff, which is in some of my comments later on, that there was a lot of discussion last meeting. The zoning changes will come to this planning commission as a whole group. There will not be separate pieces that are going to be like presented with 4 hours of discussion. It will be presented, this planning commission will get the current zoning,
A package.
a package, and the new zoning, which I know there was lots of comment about whether it's being rewritten. I don't know a better word for what's happening to the zoning, other than saying it's being rewritten. The current format is being changed. We have a new master plan that needs to be addressed in our zoning. We have a new village area that needs to be addressed in the zoning. We have 15 points that this planning commission has already brought up that wants to be changed. To me, that's rewriting the zoning. We're not looking at every single zoning piece. Most of the zoning is going to stay. But when we talk about verbiage, which is ad nausea discussed within this planning commission, I would use the word rewritten because that's what's happening. There's a subcommittee that's going to be formed or has been formed. I am the planning commission person on that. Scott Rizzi is on there. He spent many years on the planning commission, and Supervisor Les Bronce is on that as well. Changes will be discussed bi-weekly or weekly in that meeting, and then brought again back to the planning commission for approval or consideration as a whole. The zoning ordinance changes along with the current zoning, so that everybody on the planning commission can look at what has been changed and noted, and it will come to us as a whole to be addressed. So that being said, I see no problem with the calendar as presented.
Member Bruno, I think you like to hear that you're right, and you are right that the planning commission ultimately does decide its meeting schedule. So whatever changes this board wants to make to that.
To the one that's being presented.
So I think I hear you, and I'm listening. I think I have that correct. I think there would be no foul with scheduling 2 a month, and if we find that we don't have material, the opposite has been the case. We have had how many, Andrea, have we had that have been marathons? A lot.
So what the February, what are you proposing?
So I'm proposing 2. I looked back at
Third and
the 3rd and the 3rd and 21st.
And
24th.
may I say, just like from what we have in right now,
Yep.
development slows down this time of year. We usually have an uptick in applications around March and April. I think that the deadline for the February 3 meeting is, I don't think we need to mess with that based on our workload. I think that we're gonna be able to cancel
But that's the beauty of it. So while I respect what you're saying, but let's give us the freedom to cancel if we need to cancel. But if we have like, Wendy is saying we're at some point gonna have a large binder in front of us.
You're gonna have
Whether we're getting it in
30
piece.
days of that binder.
Okay, so 30 days of binder. So there's gonna be 2 meetings on that
Nope,
alone.
nope.
No?
You're gonna get the binder to study independently and come up with.
In
any
advance of
questions
the
in
meeting,
30 days.
Rob.
So I think I agree with Ryan that it's maybe easier to have a few extra scheduled that we end up canceling when we don't need them, it turns out, rather than ending up with, you know, June 16 being like a 5-hour meeting. Just what would kind of, I mean, it feels like that's what ends up happening. And then also, did we change the meeting time to 5:30? That's what this.
I think it's a proposal by somebody.
Let's go back to the dates. Let's add 2 dates then. We can cancel them. It sucks for people who are looking at planning ahead for vacation times or something like that. It is nice to know ahead of time, so I will disagree with what you're saying. It's very hard to keep tentative dates on a calendar twice a month when you're looking at long-term vacations and such. But let's just add a couple of dates to this, Andrea. We're gonna add February 24th. Which one do you want to add for September? We have the 15th is the one that's on the schedule, and you want to add one more. Do you want it to be the 8th or the 22nd? The 1st is the holiday, right?
But does it need to be the 15th, right?
Right, so could we just bump it? So the 1st is the holiday. Could we do the 8th and the 22nd?
I'd rather leave the one as the current, the 15th. Again, looking at consistency when it comes to scheduling. I think we should leave the 15th. You want to add one? We'll add it to the 8th or the 22nd. Which one would you like to add?
Well,
Well,
I
this
think
hasn't
we can
been
all
planned
discuss it,
yet,
right? You're kind of dictating
Go
to
ahead.
us. Any thought on being consistent like we're doing in February? Not having 2 weeks in a row?
We'll have consistency with 2 members that aren't going to be here, so go right ahead.
You lost me. Say it again?
That neither of them are going to be here in September.
I'm sure a timer,
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
so you guys can debate it.
We already have, so make a decision, Ryan, put it on the calendar. So we can vote on it.
well.
What do you want, Ryan? 8th and the 22nd? Is that what you want?
I'm pouncing off people. Apparently you don't want that. Well, what's your take on it, Rob? Rob might stay. I don't know.
I mean, I didn't realize that like September 15th was like already set, so.
I don't think it is. I think this is
It is
draft.
that, it is set, and if you look at the consistency of the 1st and the 3rd meeting of the month is what I'm saying. That's where it's set. Historically, when we have changed a date because of a holiday, we have added to the month. We have not changed the 1st or the 2nd, the normal meeting for the month to accommodate an extra or.
I would
adding-
respectfully disagree. If you pull up the schedule for 2022, that's why I went back and I looked. I don't know. I've only been on this commission 2 years. I don't have 2 years of data to go off of. It was done once. I don't know if you were involved, but I guess if you're that adamant, we can do 2 weeks in a row, 15th and 22nd. I'd prefer not to be 2 weeks in a row. That's my preference. We got your preference, Rob?
It won't affect me. You're right.
Ralph?
I doubt I'm gonna be around, so I'm
Okay.
not gonna give you an
Do
opinion.
you have something planned on the 8th already? Does that impact? I mean,
I'm talking for. The 8th is not the problem.
Okay.
The problem is. it's
moving
just-
to.
Yeah.
Okay. I will be able to do that.
And again, I just won't be here if I make plans.
And as I said before, the February meeting, the deadline for that meeting is in 4 days. And we don't have any applications. So that one will likely get canceled.
It doesn't matter. Let's finish doing what we're doing. Make the schedule.
So we're adding September 22nd.
And we're adding February. All right, let's talk about the date or the time.
February 10th.
17th, I think it is.
It's already on. We talked about the 8th. So it's the 8th and the 15th. 15th on the schedule, right? September 15th.
And she's asking February, her question was February.
Then it would be
The 10th.
What's the holiday?
I think we suggested the 17th.
is the holiday.
So the 10th.
Oh.
Me? Nothing.
Do you want the 17th or the 24th?
The 17th is a holiday, we can't, so the
I
24th,
mean, the 10th or the 24th?
the 24th.
All right, let's talk about the time.
Well, I guess based on what you just said a few minutes ago, for tradition, I like 7. 5:30 would be tough for myself, and I guess it's tough for a lot of people to come and participate. But working from home, it's easier, I don't know.
Andrea, do you want to give us some input on that?
You sent out a message to. the-
Yeah, so I
the
did send
previous-
out a message to the planning commission that are still on. All the planning commissioners, except for you, Ryan, said that they were fine with 5:30. So everyone. 5:30 works.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
That's not the one that I got. but
She has. it
I'm
in writing.
unclear what polling you did. Did
I
you share
asked-
that with us?
I asked 2 people that I thought were gonna be around. I asked member Rowland and member Richardson, and they both said 7. Well,
I was informed by.
Well, but Andrew, this-
That Rob texted her and said, 5:30 works for you, Rob.
but Andrew, I think you're circumventing the process, though. What, the collaboration you did behind the scenes isn't, we're supposed to be collaborating here,
Hang
correct?
on, hang on. You were just throwing yourself in the pool. She sent an email to people disclosing each person on an email asking for input. You are telling us you circumvented the process by going to 2 planning commission members on your own. So I don't think it's fair to say that she's the one circumventing the process. At all. She sent an email.
Hold on. But she's acting like it's carved cast in stone. I'm not saying what I have is cast in stone. I said I talked to 2 people. And it's conflicting. I don't know which is right. All I have is my 2 data points.
Okay,
So my question is
let's vote.
don't we
Who
vote
wants-
here?
We have 4 people sitting here. Who wants 5:30? Who wants 7? Okay. It's gonna sit then till next year when we get the
4
rest of
people.
our planning commission on here. Yep. So we have a scheduled date set. The time change, we'll wait until the first meeting. The first meeting will be then at 7 o'clock on January, whatever date that is. And at that time, we'll talk about the date or the time for the meetings.
Okay, moving on. Article 10, are there any visitors on the line? Okay. Article 11, other business.
Thanks, Ralph, for your service. to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
ZBA.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed working with you over the years.
And I appreciate you coming back and helping us here on the planning commission.
Mine was semi 2, but they're kind of both Ralphisms. Thank you, Ralph. But before you depart us, there's one thing you often ask, I want to check in on. Can you check in on it one last time before you depart us?
What's that? What's that? Oh, yeah. There's a small thing that we were working on, a little subcommittee called Farmland Preservation. The last meeting we had on that was back on January 28th, as I recall. And I would like to see that be rejuvenated and brought back for further discussion. So I can take notes.
I wanted to.
I love taking notes on that.
Thank you, seriously.
Thank you for your comment.
Very good mention.
Okay, any other business? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.